Mention the words model railroading to most people, and it probably conjures up images of a small circular track in the basement of a house somewhere, or perhaps a Christmas scene in which children are gathered around a tree as a just unwrapped model train sits in the background. However, mention the words garden railroading and you would more than likely get a perplexed look. Yet this aspect of the model railroading hobby is one of the fastest growing and most visually exciting forms there is. So just what is garden railroading? Well, in its most basic form, garden or outdoor railroading is simply taking a model train and running it outside. Yet, as we shall see, it is also much more than that. In fact, garden railroading now boasts a worldwide following, in which adherents have clubs and organizations that meet regularly to compare notes, to socialize, and to view the work of others involved in the hobby. And several magazines are now devoted exclusively to outdoor railroading. Garden railroading also has its own equipment and trains designed specifically for outdoor operations, and its fans have created some of the most beautiful and exciting miniature railroads imaginable. While in indoor modeling, the environment is largely controlled by the individual. In the great outdoors, the challenges are much larger because of the obvious forces of nature. The outdoor railroader must be ready to deal with the same adverse conditions that affect real working trains, albeit on a much smaller scale. Certainly, mudslides, washouts, and windfalls are all a concern, but it is precisely those challenges that add the extra element of realism and excitement to the outdoor layouts. In this program, we will be looking at two superb outdoor railroads, both of which represent literally hundreds of hours of painstaking and meticulous work that has culminated in a pair of very different yet equally impressive layouts. Both are examples of what can be achieved when imagination, planning, attention to detail, and hard work are blended equally and executed perfectly. Seattle area dentist Jim Easley and his wife, Lydia, have transformed their back garden into a wonderful miniature reproduction of some of the railroads they saw while traveling in Europe. Dubbed the Bayerische Alpenbahnen, or Bavarian Alpine Railway, Jim's expansive layout has over 250 feet of track and features Swiss and Austrian-style villages. It is a testament to how a well-laid-out railroad can complement a backyard and blend in with the landscaping to create a scene that is both technically impressive and visually exciting. We talked with Jim about his layout and equipment.
Jim, how long have you been working on this garden railroading setup?
Well, we started outside in 1987 trying to develop a concept of what we wanted. We were redoing our garden area back here, and we felt that was appropriate time to do it. And then in '88, while we began to do the hard work of putting some track down and beginning to ballast and learning what it's all about. One of the exciting things about outdoor model railroading or garden railroading is the fact that you're faced with all the natural problems, just like the prototypical railroads. You have concerns about your ballast. Is it going to settle or not? You have concerns about the terrain. If you have a hillside, you have to worry about the water and how it's going to run off. Is it going to flood an area of concern to you? But then on the plus side, there's some real challenges too with even a little snow. I have not myself had a little snowplow built, but they do exist. They even move light snow away in the winter.
Now, how about LGB? Is that something someone should start with, or would you think they should start with something smaller and work up, or?
Well, you can work with various sizes. LGB is sized 1 to 22.5. That's essentially about 1/2 inch to the foot. And it's very convenient to utilize. But there are other railroads that are using O gauge, which is the typical gauge of what Lionel has been in the past. And that can work successfully too. In England, they've had outdoor model railroading for years. More recently, Germany has taken it up. Most people out in the outdoors think of about 1/2 inch to the foot as being the size for them. We are using the LGB cars generally. LGB is a German company and first developed these type of trains in the early 60s. At this present time, there are many new companies that are producing a lot more variety in trains. We happen to have established our theme to be the European theme, and LGB does produce European as well as American prototypical engines and cars. Presently, though, there are many other manufacturers that are producing a lot of the narrow gauge railway cars of the U.S., and that has grown a lot in popularity.
You've been pretty happy with the LGB.
Well, we've been very satisfied with it. It was the leader. It is the premier car and engine manufacturer. The track is sectional. It is easily placed. It is very firm and holds up under all sorts of circumstances.
I see also some of the buildings, they look like they were purchased, and you said others you made yourself.
Yes, there are a good number of models now that available, either of wood or special plastics that you can obtain for outdoor railroading. Now, we've maintained a European theme here, but over the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a tremendous surge in what is available to the modeler, so that many are modeling in the Western U.S. theme or something of this sort. Sometimes we will do what we call scratch building, and that's just starting and building just like you would other things. They may be out of plaster, they may be out of wood, may be out of plastic. Initially, outdoor model railroading or garden railroading got started in England, and they utilized little steam engines or even wind-up trains. Later in the 60s, when LGB presented the potentials of getting outdoors with these type of electrical type of railroads, they began to develop the hobby. Since that time, and more recently, with a greater emphasis, the United States has entered this arena. We now have, for instance, over 50 outdoor model railroad societies in the United States, which are developed of groups of individuals coming together to share the fun of outdoor railroading. So we've grown immensely.
Can you think of any tips for someone thinking about getting into garden railroading, and would you recommend it to them?
I would certainly recommend it to them. In fact, I would urge that one, if you have any interest in railroading at all, you give it a consideration. One of the neat things we've found is it becomes a family activity. Many times in model railroading, it's thought of an individual having a small track, maybe in the basement or on some platform. But out in the yard, it takes on a whole new dimension. Not only is it a dimension for the whole family, but many of the neighbors, your friends, can readily enjoy it and tend to come over and want to see what's being done and what you're doing. So it's a real easy thing to share.
Do you have any plans on expanding out further into your yard back there?
Well, I don't know how far I'll expand. It sort of depends on acquiring property. The wife tends to control my property. But we do have individual areas. We have a mountain scene we want to make across from the river. I want to have some tunnels through there and some of the typical architecture of the Swiss mountains. I have a farming area I would like to develop. I have some wood products. Being from the Northwest, we have to think of wood, so I'd like to build a lumber mill and add some character to some of the reason for the railroad to be. It's nice to have it go around from station to station, but there are other reasons. There might even have a brewery built someday. I always have plans to expand it, but I have to purchase those rights from my wife. And
The second garden railway we will be looking at also belongs to a Puget Sound resident. Herb Chaudière has named his layout the Crannis Garden Railway. Herb, like Jim Easley, makes extensive use of LGB equipment, but here the similarities end. Whereas Jim Easley's miniature railroad is modeled after the trains of Europe, Herb's is designed to look like Depression-era American narrow gauge. And as we shall see, he has done a wonderful job of recreating that look, down to the tiniest of details. After careful planning and extensive research, Herb started building his layout in 1985. Most of the structures, including the bridges, are hand-built and show an exacting concern for authenticity. The trestles were built by Ben Johnson, who used quarter-inch thick lattice stock cut to 3/8 inch wide by 3.5 inch long sections. Currently, Herb's Railroad has approximately 900 feet of track, 600 of that being main line, and 300 feet being sidings. Virtually all of the detail parts, including headlights, generators, marker lights, and tender oil hatches, came from trackside detail. Many of the miniatures, including the people, come from plastic automobile and military models that are 1/24th scale. Rather than using artificial weathering techniques, Herb instead allows his trains to naturally weather. It is a slow process, but the results speak for themselves. Couplers are USA train knuckle couplers, and the coupling is done with prototypical uncoupling levers. The locomotives are operated with a command carrier control system. A steady 20 volts is carried to the rails. The speed is adjusted by receivers in each locomotive according to signals sent through the rails. Also utilized is an RC throttle, enabling the operator to control the trains while walking alongside them anywhere on the layout. Herb has his main terminal located in the garage, as well as the division yard, which he calls West Overshoe. Herb's layout allows him to run up to 3 trains at once, and in sticking with authenticity, he has kept all his tracks to a maximum 4% grade. As the trains make their way around the track, the viewer can't help but feel like he has been brought back in time to an era of railroading that is now mostly contained in history books. But wonderfully, here in front of our eyes is a real miniature reproduction of that era and the beautiful trains that help make American history. And doing it outside adds a lot to the authenticity. The backyard, with its plants, dirt, rain, and mud, makes it all the more believable. One of the comments we heard repeated often around outdoor railroaders was the importance of taking the first step, putting down a little track. It should be emphasized that to enjoy outdoor or garden railroading, one does not need to build a huge layout nor spend large sums of money. Simply starting with a very basic circular track will yield hours of enjoyment and could perhaps plant the seed that leads to a much larger layout. Check to see if you have a local club or organization in your area, as this is probably the easiest way to get information about garden railroading and to meet others interested in the hobby. Another way would be to pick up a copy of a modeling magazine, such as Garden Railways.